You've been hearing us talk about imperial yeast for a while now, and that's because we absolutely love this stuff. With 200 billion cells in each pitch-right pouch, we rarely even need to make starters these days. Unfortunately, not everybody has the access to imperial yeast those of us out here on the West Coast do, because they're based out of Portland, Oregon. But things are about to change. Imperial Yeast is excited to announce the opening of their East Coast location, which is huge for those who want the freshest yeast possible with the best pitch rates, but brew on the other side of the country. They're going to start by offering their four most popular strains, A38 Juice, A07 Flagship, L13 Global, and GO3 Dieter, with the goal of providing their full lineup of yeast by mid-2021. So start your planning now at imperialyeast.com. A few weeks ago, we dropped an episode where we discussed the arguably touchy subject of health as it pertains to drinking alcohol. I expected it to yield some feedback from listeners, and that's exactly what happened. A bunch of you reached out to us to share your views on the interplay between both health and drinking. And as I was going through those emails, it occurred to me that others might benefit from hearing those different perspectives as well. You are listening to the Brewlosophy Podcast. I'm your host, Marshall Schott. And joining me on this Brews Views episode to discuss your views on drinking and health is contributor Cade Jobe.
Yeah, I'm glad we got so much, positive feedback. I was a little worried that people were going to write in and be like, "You guys are a bunch of crocs. This is terrible." And say like, "Oh, you're wrong on this, you're wrong on that," and like start citing a whole bunch of stuff. But no, I mean the feedback was generally positive, but it was so cool. It was so varied, and to see like different people's experience with beer and to be able to talk about that again, I'm pretty excited. I think this is going to be fun. We haven't done like a follow up episode on a Brews Views before, but we got so much feedback that it just kind of made perfect sense to do this.
Yeah, I remember the first email, and I'm looking at the subject line, and it said feedback on this episode or whatever, and I was like, oh boy, here it goes. And it was so supportive. And really, I think people have an interesting. We do weird things when we hear people either validate us or completely contradict us, right? And so I was sort of expecting that we were going to be contradicting more people, and it sounds more like people were surprised that they related with our opinions. So I did mention during that last Brews Views episode how hesitant I'd been to focus on the topic of health and drinking, in large part because I didn't want anybody taking our words as anything more than just opinion. Unfortunately, that is impossible to avoid in this day and age. In fact, one person accused me of saying that obesity is fully due to a person's choices in life or something along those lines, which was not my intention at all. Now, that's not to say I don't think some people wrongly blame genetics for their health in order to avoid taking some responsibility for making things better in their life, but obviously that's not the case for everybody. I just wanted to reiterate yet again that the Brews Views series is specifically designed for us to share our opinions as openly as possible, and as humans, we are likely not always going to say things in the best way possible or in the way that best conveys our true beliefs. So please trust that it's not our intention to judge anybody, especially on this episode where we're going to be sharing stuff submitted by others. They're not just our opinions. We do genuinely appreciate all of your different perspectives and look forward to chatting about it in this episode. All right, if you enjoy this show and you'd like to make sure it sticks around, consider becoming a patron of Brewlosophy at patreon.com/Brewlosophy, where in return for making a small monthly pledge, you'll receive rewards like access to unpublished recipes, unique discounts at YakimaValleyHops.com, and an invite to a monthly live Q&A session with somebody in the brewing world. Coming up in July 2021 is none other than Brewlosophy contributor and host of the Brew Lab, also co-host of this episode, Cade Jobe, who in addition to all of the roles he has at Brewlosophy has experience in the world of professional brewing and is currently enrolled in the brewing program at Oregon State University.
Yeah, that's me. I get to be the guest on this one. I'm excited. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, in order to be a part of this event, I'm excited about it as well. You do have to make your pledge at patreon.com/Brewlosophy no later than July 23rd, 2021, as Cade is going to be taking questions on Saturday, the 24th. As a patron at this level, you'll also have access to all past sessions with guests like John Palmer, Russian River's Vinny Chilurzo, Grandmaster BJCP Judge Gordon Strong, and many, many more. Another really easy way to support us is by using the links found at brewlosophy.com/support. When you're doing your shopping online, your experience doesn't change a bit, and we get a little kickback for the referral. Finally, if you wouldn't mind letting us know what you think about this show by leaving a rating and review in Apple Podcast or wherever it is you listen to podcasts that allows you to leave reviews, we really would appreciate it. Feedback is brought to you by Brewers Hardware, who offer brewers beautiful stainless gear such as the turnkey BH15 Pilot Brewing System, which has a hard plumb manifold to eliminate all hosing changes during the brew process. Brewers Hardware has a ton of unique, purpose-built products useful to both professionals and home brewers. Go see for yourself at brewershardware.com, and don't forget to mention Brewlosophy at checkout to receive that free gift. That's brewershardware.com. Kyle McWilliam wrote in with feedback on episode 188, where we discussed our experiences with beer off flavors. Kyle said, after a very succinct discussion regarding how oxidation can result in a variety of flavors and colors due to the variety of compounds available in the beer for oxidation and reduction reactions, Cade made a comment about, quote, oxygen burning. I'm not trying to be pedantic, but I feel the need to speak up on this one as it's a bit of a pet peeve for me. Oxygen doesn't burn. Fuel burns in the presence of oxygen. If you light a match in an oxygen-rich environment, the match will burn much faster than normal, but it won't explode. Great episode otherwise. I was hoping for a breakdown of off flavors in this manner.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's absolutely right. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry if that was misinterpreted. Yeah, the oxygen itself doesn't actually explode. Yeah, fuel burns in the presence of oxygen. But yeah, thank you for being pedantic. I really do appreciate that whenever somebody calls out those nuances.
Yeah, I just like that somebody else is getting called out instead of me.
Yeah, right. Why I deserved it. And here's an Easter egg. I'm pretty sure on the last episode, I misrepresented how lactic acid fermentation happens. So if somebody can figure out what that is and then write in with feedback, I'll see if you can do it, if our listeners are paying attention.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I do like the cut of Kyle's jib. I mean, I get hung up on things like this in my life as well. So, to the point that it can get annoying at times, you're constantly calling people out. I try not to do that, and my wife will attest to that. But we do appreciate your feedback, Kyle. If you have show feedback, you can send it to feedback@brewlosophy.com or drop us a line on social media. Growing up, I was always the kid who preferred Reese's peanut butter cups over the more sugary candy like Skittles and such, mostly because I absolutely love peanut butter. Well, listener Zach Otting from Cincinnati, Ohio, sent me a bottle of beer from Listerman Brewing called Nutcase Peanut Butter Porter, which he said is his wife's favorite beer.
1 minute beer review with Jersey and Tim.
Don't sniff. I know what you're thinking, and I don't know the reason.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers to you, Timmy Tim. Ooh, it smells good.
That's weird.
It is weird. That's got to smell, right? Most times we smell it just to act like we know that we're learned, but this has got to smell, huh?
Yeah.
What is that smell?
I don't know.
Let's drink it. Oh, God, that's good to me.
Whew.
You don't like it, do you?
It's going to be hard to muster down, but...
Mustard down?
Yeah.
You realize how dumb you are? I love you. You're one of my best friends. That was dumb. Mustard down. Peanuts? Like peanut buttery peanuts?
Wow.
Like peanut butter. Smell it. Smell it and tell me that's not peanut butter.
Yeah.
Peanut butter.
It's not that obvious, but...
Is this peanut butter?
It's like burnt peanut butter. Roasted.
Roasted peanut
There we
butter.
go.
Chunky peanut butter. Oh. Yeah, dude, yeah. Oh, I like it. It's thick.
Yeah, you can only drink one
You
of
can only
these.
drink so much peanut butter.
Yeah, only one of these bad boys.
Gulp down a Jiffy. So if I wanted to, I could pair this nice, great peanut butter wine with a nice, with a piece of bread with jelly on it. That would be a perfect pairing.
There it is. Seems pretty strong, too.
Does that just feel strong to you? I say it's 5.3.
Nah, I'm going to go with a 8.6.
Loser has to run naked to Costco and back. What is it?
6.8.
Let's go streaking.
I'm not going to be running to Costco and back, by the way.
Hell yes. I've said a million times that I'm not a huge fan of adjunct-laden beers, but Nutcase Peanut Butter Porter was so good, so well balanced, not too overpowering. Absolutely wonderful job, Listerman Brewing.
I kind of like Jersey's idea of dipping a piece of bread in
With jelly on it, yeah.
Right, exactly. For some reason, that does actually sound really good to me. But yeah, this is one of those. I've seen peanut butter porters around occasionally, and I've tried them, and they're good. Like that's just a great style to match that with that peanut butter, right? Like so, like the porter from the chocolate, or the chocolate from the porter with the peanut butter. Oh man, yeah, that's fantastic. I've never done it myself because I've heard it's kind of maybe a little bit difficult to brew with peanut butter. But yeah, it sounds fantastic, and it sounds like the guys really loved it.
I loved it too. I mean, and I again, I'm not a big adjunct laden beer guy, but this beer was money. And from what I hear, I did some poking around online. online and what I read, Listerman sounds to be doing some really good stuff over there in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been to Cincinnati once, but I don't think Listerman was around back then. Next time I go, if ever I go again, you better believe I'll be checking out that brewery. Thanks so much, Zach Otting, for sending in so many beers. We've still got a few to get to. If you'd like to have your beer or any other fermented beverage you feel like sending in reviewed on the show, you can email me, marshall@brewlosophy.com, and we'll get you all set up. We've got to take a quick break. When we're back, we'll be sharing listener perspectives on health and drinking. After a long brew day, the last thing I want to do is waste more time chilling wort. I've tried so many different options, and ultimately I settled on the super efficient immersion chillers made by Jaded Brewing. With the King Cobra and Hydra, I'm able to chill my entire batch of wort from boiling to just a few degrees above groundwater temperature in as little as 6 minutes. If an immersion chiller is right for your brewery, then do yourself a favor and check out all of the rad options Jaded Brewing has to offer at jadedbrewing.com, and be sure to let them know Brewlosophy sent you. Have you ever thought about adding a port to your kettle but held off because you didn't feel like drilling into your gear or sending it off to have someone else do it? From the makers of the world's fastest counterflow chiller, the Xchillerator, comes the Hangover, the easiest way to add extra ports to your kettle as well as countless other options. Mount a faucet to your keg for easy portable pouring. Set up the perfect whirlpool arm. Hold a heating element in place. All of this and so much more without permanently modifying your gear. Manufactured right here in the United States, the Hangover offers brewers too many convenient solutions to list here. So head over to Xchillerator.com today to see what the Hangover can do for you. There's no denying that stainless steel is the best material for brewing equipment, and Delta Brewing Systems offers some of the lowest prices on high-quality stainless gear, like the Firm Tank, which in addition to holding 8 gallons or 30 liters of wort, comes with a domed lid to even further reduce the chances of a messy blow-off. Plus, it can hold up to 4 psi of pressure for closed transfers. Delta Brewing Systems also has their own line of brew kettles as well as one of the lowest-priced all-in-one electric brewing systems out there, and their prices are shockingly low. If you're in the market for legit stainless gear that won't break the bank, do yourself a favor and head over to deltabrewingsystems.com today. Craftmaster Growlers takes traveling with and sharing beer to a new level. Made from heavy-duty stainless steel, Craftmaster Growlers are double-wall insulated and can keep beer cold for up to 8 hours. Unlike typical growlers, Craftmaster Growlers come with a swiveling tap and fully integrated CO2 regulator cap, allowing beer to stay fresh for 2 weeks or more. The square design takes up less space and will fit in most refrigerator doors, and every Craftmaster Growler comes with a 1-year warranty. There are 64 and 128-ounce versions available over at craftmastergrowlers.com. Unlike most of the feedback we received, the emails sent in about this particular topic tended to be a little bit lengthier, understandably, and we made little effort to cut them down or over-edit them. Also, you'll notice that we only use first names. This was a decision that we made because of how sensitive the topic is, for some people at least, and we decided to keep things somewhat confidential. If you wanted your whole name read out and your location and such, we do apologize, but again, we didn't want to give too much away about the people who are sending in these perspectives because they are kind of sensitive. So here we go. First one comes in from Michael. He says, first things first, I want to say that was an excellent Brews Views episode. I think it's an important topic that's almost pushed to the side in craft beer and homebrewing communities. I myself like to have a beer or two every night, usually while cooking dinner and one with my dinner. I thought that was a healthy habit. I'm a mailman who walks roughly 12 to 15 miles per day, Jesus, on my routes, so I get in quite a bit of exercise. But recently, I've taken a step back. I started to think, wow, I think this is turning incredibly unhealthy. So now I usually only have two beers a week, and it's usually my home brew. Anyways, as a veteran of the Army, I've seen some of the most unhealthy relationships with alcohol, most of them drinking due to the horribly long day of work they just had. But on the other hand, a lot drink to wash away bad memories, but what they don't understand is the alcohol will only bring the memories back stronger of the things they've seen and done. I've seen well-decorated service members tarnish their careers because of a DWI at 6:30 in the morning, throwing down the drain a successful 19-year career in the military because they came to work smelling like a bar, or brand new soldiers fresh out of high school coming into work with Jack Daniels in their water bottles. Ay, ay, ay. Most of them continue on this cycle of rehab, alcohol, et cetera, until the Army has nothing left to do but discharge them all because they can't turn that on and off switch from a healthy lifestyle with alcohol to extreme alcohol issues because most are too afraid to get the mental health help that's so desperately needed because of the society that we have groomed men to think they can't have mental health issues or to simply grow a pair, quote unquote. I think it's a very important topic to be able to moderate the amount of alcohol you consume. Kudos on the excellent show. You make my mail routes 10 times easier.
Oh man, well that's good. I mean, for 12 to 15 miles, I'm glad that you got something to listen to. But the grow a pair. Oh, that just such a toxic set of words, right? I really hate that phrase. It's been used. I mean, people have told me that a couple of times personally in my life, and I always just kind of want to go, no.
I'm cool with the pair I've got.
Yeah, I'm cool. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. And by the way, bye. All right, you and I are done talking. if you say that, but that's so interesting. You know, I don't have a lot of experience with military, so I can't really comment on that. But you know, 2 beers a week. Hey, yeah, I mean that's totally fine if that works for you. I mean, I'm not advocating here, and I don't think Marshall is either. Like, go balls to the wall, drink 3 to 4 beers a week, do whatever you want. Like, you know, life is a party. No, I mean. Everything that we're talking about is balance and whatever works for you and your physical health and mental health.
Yeah. I've never been in the military, but my twin brother, in fact, just retired from the Army National Guard. He was in the Army for about 18 years before moving over to the Army National Guard and doing the thing there. And absolutely, there is this grow a pair mentality of I think I'm not a big fan of catch terms, toxic masculinity being one of them. But it makes sense, and this is kind of what it feels like Michael is hitting on, is this idea of toxic masculinity and the component of drinking that comes with that you just have to party all the time and that it's cool. I mean, there are definitely people who drink to numb the pain. I get that. It breaks my heart, the shit that these people see in war. I mean, my brother, we're twin brothers who talk about everything, and he still hasn't told me all the crazy stuff that went down when he was over in Iraq. You know, he's kind of hinted at stuff, and I just leave it alone. I get it, wanting to numb that, we're human beings who, unless you're a freaking sociopath, you feel bad for hurting other people, even if they're bad guys, you know? I get it. I get that piece of it. But then there's the component of do it because it's cool, right? And I knew I had friends in high school even who would come with vodka in their water bottles to school. I mean, I couldn't believe it. That's just not something my brain would ever, I would be terrified of getting caught, first off. But yeah, that idea and it just, if you're going to do it to look cool and then you get in trouble for it, I mean, I guess that's the hits you in the face, the sign that hits you in the face, right? Is like, well, here you go. This is consequences of your behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know, I never, you know, getting a DWI, I mean, it's sort of an extreme example, right? You know, and that's just something like, you know, alcohol, it can be an addictive substance, right? And it can mess with your mind and, you know, affect your ability to process things and drive and do all that sort of stuff. So you absolutely need to be safe whenever you're doing that, right? And then, like, I think anybody would have concerns if you're coming to work in the morning with Jack Daniels in your water bottle, right? I mean, you know, but again, you know, everything's in balance. It's fun to have alcohol. It's fun to hang out and drink beer with people. But yeah, I mean, just kind of keep it in balance. And like you said about the military, like everything that they've seen, using alcohol as a coping mechanism isn't addressing. I think you even said this in the previous podcast, right? The issue is the underlying, you know, issue, I guess. Yeah. You know, right? It's the underlying thing. Like the alcohol is the coping mechanism, but if you don't treat the underlying problem, then you know, it doesn't matter how much alcohol you drink, you're never going to get away from it. So you need to treat the underlying problem to be able to have a healthy relationship just in your life and with alcohol.
Yeah, and I'll make a comment that I feel like some people are going to take the wrong way, but that's okay. If you're using a substance, overusing or abusing even a substance, and with the hope of reducing some psychic or emotional pain, that's a pretty immature approach to dealing with reality. And I say that because I work in this field. I mean, this is what I deal with. You know, right now, we're sitting here telling you that that's not going to fix the problem. It's going to temporarily numb it while causing an even bigger problem. You have to accept that. And so again, I mean, we're already starting off this show saying this. if you have a drinking issue, go get help. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying that you're having problems. Doesn't mean you have to be a crybaby. Doesn't mean, you're not growing a pair, whatever these stupid things are that our society has taught men to be like. It just means you need some help. It's all good. So we do appreciate you writing in, Michael. That was really cool of you to do that. And yeah, the military piece of it is very interesting. I agree.
Yeah. All right, well, we got one from Mark now. So Mark says, I loved hearing y'all's take on alcohol as it impacts people's health. And while I agree with most of what you and Cade spoke about, I also wonder about the evolutionary process of addiction and attraction with alcohol. I really think it's a fascinating idea, and one where a friend of mine did research. It's a paper on our fruit fly friends who, besides being hated for carrying Acetobacter, serve as a vital model organism for human-related diseases. In this paper, the PI, the principal investigator, pursued whether or not fruit flies were genetically predisposed to ethanol consumption and behavior associated with ethanol consumption. And he put a link to the paper. If anybody's interested in that, just shoot us an email. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I wonder if addiction or attraction to alcohol is a form of selective pressure for yeast. So yeast creating such an addictive product ensures its lineage will continue to be propagated for many generations. It raises the question of who domesticated who. Did we domesticate yeast, or did yeast domesticate us?
I fully expected all the feedback we got would be just to tear us down. We didn't really get much of that at all. But I did not expect a very neutral, emotionally neutral, and curiously scientific comment like the one Mark gave. Yeah, evolution is such a fascinating concept in general. I actually took what was in undergraduate school, took a class called motivational psychology. And I took it thinking like, oh, it's going to teach us how to be like Tony Robbins or something. No, it was all motivation in that context means evolution. What motivated us to become the beings that we are today, the species that we are today. And Mark's comment made me think of that. There's really no way to know. I mean, that you have to start off any conversation about natural selection and evolution as there's really no real concrete way to know what influenced what and how we got to where we're at. But we can make some really interesting presumptions. I'm not entirely sure on a serious level that there, before the introduction of alcohol, I don't think that as an organism, the species, Homo sapiens, whatever, human beings were had some sort of a predisposition toward liking alcohol. I do think there's a lot of coincidences and eureka moments in throughout the lineage of the human species that just happened to work out. And I mean, how many people have died because of trying something unique and new that felt different and weird? We just happen to work out well with alcohol, I suppose. But it can still kill you. So good idea, Mark. I think it's interesting.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting point too, right? Because I mean, like the liver's just its whole purpose is, or not the liver. Maybe it is the liver. One of those organs, whichever one processes alcohol. I'm blanking on it right now for some stupid reason.
Your kidneys are like the filtration system. Yeah.
There we go. I think it was kidneys. That's what I was thinking of. So like whatever part of it is that filters out toxins from your body. It filters toxins, right? And so alcohol is a toxin to your body. I mean, even though it does some interesting, things like, brain related stuff that makes you like have a high, it like experience this buzz, this great feeling. It's still a toxin to your body. So I don't know. It seems a stretch for me. I did ask a couple of people what they thought about this idea. And one person had a really interesting response, which was that no, like yeast hates alcohol. And I was like, what do you mean it makes alcohol? And it's like, yeah, it does that. So it like poisons all of its little friends around it. So that they're like, it excretes the alcohol out of its cell to kill other yeast cells. And I was like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. I didn't ever think of it that way. But yeah. And if you think about it, if yeast make too much alcohol, what happens? They die, right? Yeah. A lot of yeast, can't do it, and then I think about like all of the grain alcohols, right? That were consumed over like hundreds of years that like caused blindness and killed people, right? Like the really bad alcohols, from uncontrolled fermentation. So I don't know. I think it may be a little bit of a stretch to think that yeast domesticated us.
But I love the idea.
But I love this idea. And I love that fruit flies, the fruit flies as a model organism for humans. I would love to see the results of an experiment where you got a bunch of flies drunk and saw what they did.
I hate fruit flies. We have them like crazy down here in Fresno. And they are, I mean, it is, I have a dump bucket that I pour the first, couple ounces off of my taps whenever I go and pour new beer. And I just keep it out in my garage. And boy, during the warmer months, like right now, 2 days and you smell like, it smells like vinegar, you know? Those fruit flies just love beer. So, well, Mark, thank you for the comment. Yeah, we got a good laugh out of it. And I think it is an interesting thought experiment. So next comment comes from Cole, who says, big fan of the show. Love hearing about all of your opinions. I am a huge fan of beer drinking, brewing, and culture. It's pretty much all I think about these days. I'm not sure if that's a problem in and of itself, but I can kind of agree with you, Cole. It brings me a ton of joy. I even started an Instagram account recently just to document my home brewing and what I'm drinking. I'm a pretty heavy drinker. I probably have at least 3 drinks a day. I'm a pastry chef, so at the end of a shift on the weekends, we get a free shift drink from the restaurant. I'm pretty close with the bar staff, so they'll send me a beer and a scotch, and then I'll have at least one more beer when I get home before bed. That being said, I always make sure I'm drinking water and eating to balance out the effects of the alcohol. My favorite part of beer is just the taste, the ingredients, the science. I even find myself trying a lot of non-alcoholic beers just so I can have a delicious beverage with my lunch at work sometimes. He says, I like the point you talked about how everybody has their own definition of what a problem is. My girlfriend and I have had many conversations about just that, and I'm glad to say we have the same point of view. We both understand that as long as I feel healthy, happy, and my drinking doesn't affect other aspects of my life, like my job, my relationship, others around me, etc., then we don't consider it a problem at all. Beer is just my hobby. I don't drink it to get drunk. I drink it because I legitimately love the taste of it, and it makes me excited to try every beer that I can. I can admit that I was at a point of concern after I graduated college. I was lost and upset with where my life was taking me. And for a while, it was hard to get through the day without alcohol, but I quickly realized my problem and fixed it. I cut out drinking for a while, got therapy, and I found happiness and level ground. And after experiencing that, I know exactly what it feels like to have a problem and exactly how to avoid that when it comes to drinking. Over the last 2 years, I've discovered homebrewing, countless beer styles, books, and of course, podcasts all focused on beer, and I've never been happier in my personal life. Beer is what keeps me grounded and makes me feel healthy. Thanks for sharing your views and contributing to the wonderful world that is beer.
Dude, yes. Like
Yes.
everything, everything about that comment is just exactly how I feel about drinking and health, and then it's exactly what I wanted to sort of convey by doing this, right? Like, one, I love the taste of beer. Yeah. I also like the alcohol buzz, but I like beer because it's beer, right? I'm not drinking alcohol to avoid problems or drinking to excess and causing other problems, right?
Yeah.
I just really like beer, and that's like the second half, right? I never want beer or this career for me now, to negatively impact any other aspect of my life. I want to, like he said, feel happy, healthy, and that my drinking isn't affecting other aspects of my life. And as long as I've got that, as long as I, feel that way and my wife agrees, my family agrees, my friends agree, then fantastic. Then I have a healthy relationship with this beer and I can continue loving and thinking about this beer, because I do think about beer all the time. I'm with you, Cole.
We talk about it all the time. We write about it. We podcast about it. Yeah, it's a normal part of our lives. I'm 100% with Cole as well, and I don't mean to call him out when I say this, but there is this tendency, I think, for some people to make statements to make themselves feel better about certain things. And this I've heard so many times from people who end up having issues. I only drink because I like the flavor. I feel like that if we're really honest with ourselves, I think most of us, looking in the mirror and shedding our concerns and our insecurities would say, yeah, but I also like the buzz. Like you said, Cade, my thing is I'm not using that buzz to deal with problems. I know for a fact that I'm not. I'm confident in that because when I'm stressed or when I have an issue to deal with, the last thing on my mind is drinking beer. Because for me, I associate drinking, well, not just beer, anything, with good times, stress-free, having fun with my family and friends. That's how my brain processes, alcohol. And so that sounded weird. My brain processes alcohol on a physiological level as well, I'm sure. But what I mean is that's how I think about it. And so I trust that it sounds like Cole's been through a lot, and I'm so glad to hear that he is on level ground right now. What a beautiful story, and what a beautiful way or relationship to have with alcohol, right? To know just at your core that it's a healthy relationship, and even owning. I mean, he even says, I'm a heavy drinker. I drink more than the average person, but I'm healthy. I enjoy it, and it's not getting in the way of anything. That's called living life and making your own decisions, Cole. And I'm a big fan of that. I'm a proponent of it. And I know there are people out there who would say, no, but you gotta go by what every physician on earth, or the people who've been doing it for 80 years recommend. If you want to live that life, then go ahead. But I like making decisions myself. And I think Cole really emphasized that piece of it for me.
Yeah, for sure. And like, thank you, Cole, for being so honest about that, right? To actually write in and say, I had a problem, I got help for that problem and treated the underlying problem like we talked about earlier, right? And now I have this wonderful, healthy relationship. Just like my life in general is happy, healthy, and I can still consume alcohol. So I love that piece of it.
So do I. And again, another area that I didn't want to get too deep into because it is my real job, as it were. This idea of total, complete abstinence as an approach to dealing with any problem, it's not something that, statistically speaking, if you can actually stay away from this stuff, then you're not going to drink alcohol anymore. You're not going to have the issues associated with that. But I think there's a lot of area for people to just back off a little bit, to realize they've got an issue, to own that, to take responsibility for it, and still enjoy drinking on some level. It's so rooted in our culture and our society, thanks to AA, we'll call it out, that if you have an issue, then you have to completely cut it out of your life. And I've worked with people for almost 20 years now with substance abuse issues. That doesn't work for everybody. It really does not. It has a huge negative impact on their lives. Meanwhile, they're shoving higher powers and stuff down your throat. There are other ways of dealing with having an issue, and it sounds like Cole did it, what worked for him. And I love the fact that he now still gets to drink beer and enjoy it, but he's living a much healthier life. So beautiful story, Cole. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sending that, Cole. That was great. All right, Kyle is up next. So Kyle said, the last episode about drinking and health was awesome. I listen to Brulosophy podcast almost constantly on my swing shift in a lumber mill. It does have a habit of making me thirsty after a 10-hour shift. I thought maybe I'd share what I do as a separate hobby other than brewing, and that is astrophotography. I have a rad telescope set up with a DSLR for snapping photos of distant galaxies and all other deep space stuff. I started the habit of getting the telescope rig set up, level, laptop connected. Then I'll enjoy a nice cigar and a beer or two while the sun sets and the night sky reveals itself. I'm typically by myself, and it's one of the most therapeutic, relaxing kind of nights. Okay, sorry for blabbing on. Happy birthday. Well, that was actually, I think, one of the shortest comments that we got.
I know, and you said happy birthday, but he said happy brewing in his comment. But Kyle, that sounds so wonderful to me. Oh my gosh, man. Going out, spending some time alone in nature, setting this up. And I love astrophotography. I'm not a photographer. The best pictures I've ever taken have been of, every once in a while when I'm brewing and I snap a good shot that gets to go on the website like that. I suck at photography. My wife is a photographer, and it amazes me what that artistic perspective some people have that I just cannot relate with. To go out there, set all that stuff up, sit and watch the sunset. I don't like cigars. I more power to you if you smoke them. Gross to me, but to enjoy a nice, delicious beer while the sun's setting, and then you're staying out and taking these beautiful photos. I love it, Kyle. Sounds so cool.
Oh yeah. I mean, beer at sunset. That's like talking about like sitting out on a patio and watching the sun go down, drinking a beer. But he makes a good point here too. Like hobbies are also super important, right? I mean, hobbies are therapeutic releases. They're relaxing, right? Yeah. I mean, having a beer while doing a hobby is one. I mean, it's great that my hobby involves beer.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of a cool thing too, right? Like again, beer for me is this, like you said earlier, it's about having fun and being relaxing and just chilling, kind of enjoying life is what drinking beer is about for me. It's not like, hobbies do help me stay grounded. And I love that. Like I said, I've talked a bunch of times about sci-fi. I love watching sci-fi or reading sci-fi books. And so that's something also that keeps me grounded. I'm not thinking about beer all the time, but yeah. So, I think there are a lot of good points in there.
Yeah. Speaking of hobbies, it's easy to view, I'm assuming, the Brulosophy crew as being just completely, knee deep in, or neck deep even in beer. And that's all we do. And it's easy to look past the fact that we all do other things as well. And I've been thinking about when we had the Brews Views article series. It didn't last very long, but we'd invite other people, well-known people in the brewing world, to write in their views on a specific topic. One of the things we did was things that you do other than brewing and beer, just to give people some insight into what other things we enjoy. If you think that'd be a fun Brews Views topic in the future, let us know, because I'd love to sit and talk about the other stuff that I do that keeps me even more grounded. And I still think about beer when I'm doing that other stuff. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, we all have other things that we do, and I think it'd be fun to talk about. So, all right. Final comment in this segment comes from Jeremiah. He says, "Hey guys, I just wanted to drop a line and say how much I enjoyed your recent Brews Views episode. No hyperbole. I have listened to it 4 times since it dropped on Tuesday. Today is Thursday. While I generally listen to each episode multiple times a week, until this one, I've never listened to one back to back. Maybe I'm alone in this, but while I do like drinking beer, mead, and cider, I'm just as content drinking a sparkling water or a good cup of coffee most of the time. For me, I totally nerd and geek out on the science. So much that I actually bought a microscope and started building a homebrew lab. It's how I found the Brewlosophy podcast. After my father-in-law turned me on to homebrewing a couple years ago, I wanted to find a science-tilted podcast on homebrewing to listen to while I work. I greatly enjoy the show and everything I'll do, both on the Brewlosophy podcast and the Brew Lab."
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Thank you for listening to the show 4 times in 2 days. That's awesome. I don't think most people are doing that, but that's pretty cool. It is kind of humbling to think that people are listening to us that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love your comment there. I'm just as content drinking a sparkling water or a good cup of coffee. I mean, that's kind of me too, right? Like, I like to enjoy a beer at night, but I mean, I guess pretty much the only things I drink are beer, coffee, water, tea, and the occasional wine, and maybe occasionally a spirit of some kind. But yeah, I mean, I'm usually drinking coffee or water. I would say I'm probably I drink more coffee than I drink anything else, coffee and water. But yeah, I mean, it's totally fine to just sit there and sip something for me. And I think that is part of having a healthy relationship with beer, but it's also what we've been talking about on this podcast. I'm also really comfortable saying that, like, I love beer. I like drinking beer. If beer didn't have the alcoholic buzz, and I didn't wake up hungover the next day, I might just drink beer completely, the whole time. But it has those other issues, and that's why I don't do that. But yeah, I like beer. I probably prefer it to those other drinks, but I still drink a lot of water and a lot of coffee throughout the day.
The question, Cade, is if beer didn't, and I mean this seriously, if beer didn't have the inebriating effect that it does, would you like it as much as you do?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe a topic. Maybe that's a Brews Views topic in and of itself. So like I said, I like the buzz, but one of the things I've been doing the last, month or so, I'd say, is I've bought a bunch of non-alcoholic beers. I've just been trying those and doing those at nights, right? And that's more just for a physical health standpoint. Because like I said on the last podcast, I have bad hangover genes. So if I drink 3 beers in a night, I'm going to pay for it the next day, and I'll do it if it's fun and I'm having fun. I'm having fun with friends. But I don't want to wake up feeling sick or have a headache the next morning. So one of the things I've been doing is drinking non-alcoholic beer, and I find that I actually kind of like that. It's a nice substitute on just weeknight, regular night drinking, and I love the taste of some of those really well-crafted non-alcoholic beers. There are some crappy ones out there.
I've yet to have one that tastes good. To me, they taste like wort with hops in it, and it just doesn't do it for me. Yeah. Ugh.
Well, I guess I would say that. Yeah, they taste like wort with hops in it, but it's fine. I mean, I don't mind that. I mean, as long as you've got some interesting wort with some interesting hops. I mean, it's kind of beer anyway. But yeah, no, I do like the alcoholic buzz of beer though too, right? So I'm not shying away from that. I do like that, and I think that is one of the reasons why I like beer so much, is because you do get that alcoholic buzz from it.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna walk away from that statement. I'm gonna own it. But I do think. It's hard to say. I like drinking non-alcoholic beers as well. We'll leave it there.
I will tell you right now that to me, it's the gestalt of beer. It's the culture. It's the hanging out with people, and it's the buzz. I'm not going to lie about that. I absolutely love that piece of it. I don't have a bad hangover gene. I'm very lucky. All of my friends are jealous of it. Do I get slightly hungover at times? Absolutely, but it doesn't hurt. It's not bad. I can function if I need to. I still don't overdo it that often. It's just not something that I'm interested in part for physical health and part for mental health, but also I just don't think about it. It's not intentional. So I like what Jeremiah said about sparkling water, because we drink the hell out of that stuff in my house. My kids like it more than soda, which I'm so proud of, so they can drink as much of it as they want, really. I drink a ton of it. Funny thing, I have to imagine people assume at times that while we're recording these episodes, we're sitting here with a beer in our hand or whatever, which would make sense. This is our 193rd episode, 193 episodes. I can count on one hand the number of times I've had a beer while recording one, and it's usually why we're out recording on location somewhere in Yakima, or when we've done conferences and stuff like that, because it's just there. For the most part, when we're recording in our offices at home, there's no beer in front of me. I mean, it's probably a weird thing to think because we're talking about beer, but I'm sitting here with an Arctic full of water, and that's what I'm sipping on while we're recording. So
me too. It's 1:15 in the afternoon on a Saturday, and I haven't even had a beer yet, which I'm kind of pissed
Neither
about.
have I. And I just got back from the gym, actually.
Exactly. I worked out got some water and stuff. And then as soon as this is over, though, I'm definitely going to go crack a beer.
I'm actually going to Crow and Wolf to collect data. How much fun is that?
Oh, there you go.
Hey, we're no more masks in California. How awesome is that? And I'm proud of it. People have done the right thing and gotten vaccinated. So, well, we've got to take another break. When we come back, more listener thoughts on our views about health and drinking.
Compact and simple to use with a small footprint for brewing indoors, the Grainfather makes it easy for you to brew professional quality beers at home. The Grainfather is an all-in-one brewing system that lets you brew all-grain beer in a single, compact stainless steel unit. It uses an electric heating element and pump to maintain a constant temperature and to circulate the wort during the mashing and cooling stages. It also comes with a counterflow chiller to reduce chilling times and produce high-quality wort. And now, with the addition of their conical fermenter, the Grainfather takes things one step further by offering homebrewers state-of-the-art temperature-controlled fermentation just like commercial breweries use. And with the Grainfather Recipe Creator and Connect app, you can easily design a recipe, sync your brewing system with your phone, and then just sit back and relax as the app takes over and assures that you maintain your scheduled mash temps and boil schedule. Head to Grainfather.com to purchase your all-in-one brewing system today and to sign up for their free recipe creator tool. Once more, head on over to Grainfather.com, that's Grainfather.com, and get started today.
Family-owned Atlantic Brew Supply is the largest homebrew shop in the Southeast. No gimmicks, no multinational corporate overlords, and no BS. They offer exclusive malts, yeast, and more from local artisans, as well as award-winning recipe kits. They also sell professional brewing gear and cask equipment from sister companies ABS Commercial and Cask Supply. Most ingredients are available by the ounce, plus Atlantic Brew Supply has an on-site calculator to help you craft your best brew. Orders are processed same day, and 2-day shipping is guaranteed for East Coast customers. Get 15% off your first order using promo code BREWPOD, that's BRUPOD, at AtlanticBrewSupply.com. As every brewer knows, the best beer requires the best hops, which Yakima Valley Hops provides fresh from the source to brewers around the world, carrying everything from classics like Cascade to modern favorites like Galaxy and Mosaic, as well as other ingredients and gear. Yakima Valley Hops has it all. And don't forget to check out their new podcast, The Late Edition, where the YVH crew goes into depth on our favorite plant with industry experts. Head over to YakimaValleyHops.com now to see all they have to offer and subscribe to The Late Edition wherever it is you listen to podcasts. The brew in a bag method has blown up over the last few years, and in that time, it's become very clear that not all bags are created equal. For the best BIAB experience, you have got to go with the Brew Bag. Made from high-quality, food-safe polyester, the Brew Bag is available in both 210 micron for standard brew in a bag, as well as 400 micron, which works beautifully for all-in-one recirculating systems. I've been a Brew Bag user for years and wouldn't brew without it. Head over to brewinabag.com to get the fabric filter that works for you and use promo code TBP17 at checkout to receive a discount. Again, that's brewinabag.com. All right, let's jump right back into this thing with some feedback from Mark, who says, during the discussion, it sounded to me like you referenced, quote, tasting one beer per night, wasn't even qualified as actual, quote, drinking. My wife wants to sign me up for AA because I like to pair a beer, 1 can of craft, with dinner, approximately 5 to 6 times per week. It's rare that I ever have 2 beers in one sitting, and only a handful of times per year that I would have more than 3 at one time, and those would always be in a social or party setting. So yes, it's affecting my life because I'm being guilted into feeling bad about it. And yes, I do sneak 1 or 2 beers per week because I want to avoid receiving that guilt trip from her. I do care about my wife and the mental health of our relationship, but I do love enjoying the taste of a good beer. It's not even about the buzz, which I rarely attain anyways due to the limited quantities.
Yeah. Wow. Yikes. So first of all, Mark, thanks again for being like super honest about this. I really appreciate the honesty, and this was a really interesting one to read through. And I got a couple of thoughts on it. Like, number one is first of all, you remember that comment? There was a comment earlier in the first segment where a guy was talking about how him and his girlfriend have just sort of they talk about what level of alcohol is okay, and they've come to sort of this agreement on it, and they have similar views. I think that's important. And, this is a little bit from my experience as a divorce lawyer where drinking was ever involved in a case, meaning like when one spouse made it an issue or of the divorce, there's usually 2 things there. There was usually that the spouses didn't agree on what was a reasonable level of drinking. And that could have been just like 1 beer is not a reasonable level of drinking ever. Right. Or polishing a bottle of wine in the morning every day before noon is not acceptable too, right? Like there's a range there. But the other thing was, and this is one of the things I always learn, and I tell everybody that I learned as being a lawyer, is that there's 2 sides to every story. Nothing is black and white. Everything's gray. I have no idea about your wife or what experiences she may have had, but there may be something there that she's experienced. A friend who had an alcoholism, or maybe something from her childhood or a family member or something. She also might just be worried about you and your physical health. I mean, I don't know, any of these things. So I don't want to like cheapen her belief or anything like this.
Yeah.
But if that's me, 5 to 6 times a week, I mean, you're drinking less than I do. And so I can't say that like that's a bad level, but again, it kind of depends on each person. So I really like this comment. I'm really glad that you wrote in, because this is kind of one of those other things that Marshall and I were talking about on the podcast. And it's this belief that people have that beer is bad, right? Like that it's inherently bad and that you shouldn't consume it. And then you're a sinner if you do it or something like that. I mean, I don't want to get religion into this, but it kind of stems from that, right?
Yeah. Well, Mark, first off, I'm sorry, my man. That is a bummer situation to be in. I'll speak almost objectively here, and I know it's still opinion. You don't have a drinking problem, dude. I mean, unless you're lying to us. But even sneaking 1 or 2 beers, quote, sneaking it to avoid an argument with your wife, that might be a relationship problem, but not so much that is not a drinking problem. If you're not getting a buzz, you're not doing it to get drunk or to deal with problems or anything like that. So I do feel for you on that front. I have to imagine, and admittedly presumptuous here, but I have to imagine that there probably is a history in Mark's wife's, that she has, that it maybe has some sort of a religious bent to it, or, at the very least, a puritanical upbringing. And what I mean by that is this idea, was instilled in her at a young age, likely, that alcohol in general is bad. And so having more than 1 beer a week it is a sign, right? It's a sign that you have an issue because you can't control yourself. And it's unfortunate because I trust that you really do care about your wife, like you said, and you care about your relationship. I tried to put myself in Mark's shoes, and thankfully that was difficult for me because my wife and I are on the same page as well. We have a very healthy relationship with drinking. We don't disagree about it too much. If I have too much, she makes fun of me, type of thing, so rightfully so, with all of my friends, of course, but that's very rare. So I'm lucky enough to not be able to relate with this too well. And I don't want to sound like I'm judging anybody. That is not the point at all. But I don't know, if I were to make a recommendation, Mark, sit down with your wife and have a heart to heart with her about alcohol and let her know your true intents. I know in relationships, one of the, you've got the divorce side of it. I've got the side trying to keep people from getting a divorce, basically. That's my experience, And
I'm never going to, I've never advocated, and I never will advocate for getting a divorce,
not.
right?
Of course not. But that's what you saw, right? I mean, you saw people when the issues were at their worst, basically.
Exactly. And like you said, the way that you solve that is by having a conversation, right? Like sit down and try to understand, why your wife feels this way, right?
Exactly.
And that requires some honesty on your side too, right? You got to tell her that you feel guilty about this, and you got to be open with her too, and you got to be willing, to listen to what she says. So all those things are difficult, but that's also healthy in a relationship. So yeah, I feel for you too, Mark. It certainly to me doesn't sound like you have a drinking problem if you're telling us the truth, unless maybe, I don't know, maybe you're just a raging dick whenever you drink too much. But I'm just kidding. Clearly,
even
I
one
don't
beer,
know
yeah.
right.
Oh,
Right.
Mark's drinking his one beer again. He's going to be a jerk. No. You made a good point. You made a good point, Cade, that I want to kind of jump on. There is this, I've noticed this thing. I've done a lot of couples therapy as the therapist, right? And there is this interesting dynamic where in two people who really love each other, genuinely love each other, not contemplating divorce or anything, it's almost like when you get serious, when you decide you want to talk about, and alcohol is a serious thing to talk about even if one person has an issue with it, right? That it's so much easier to look at the person who disagrees and not argue with them, but have a kind of a contentious comment or chat about it. And it might sound like this: you think I have a problem? I know I don't. I know I don't have a problem. Leave me alone about this. Rather than let me hear what you think is going to happen if I consume more than one beer a night. I mean, I want to hear what your concern is so that I can completely be with you in this thing and help you understand where I'm at. That right there, it opens you up. It makes us vulnerable, right? And people in healthy, loving relationships sometimes fear that vulnerability because it kind of sends a subconscious message that maybe not everything is perfect here. Well, nothing is perfect. And there are going to be times where, now I feel like I'm the therapist here, but there are going to be times where we have to sit down and have these talks. And my wife and I do it a few times a year ourselves, and it's the glue that holds us together is when we're able to have those moments and understand each other. So Mark, again, thank you so much for your honesty. I really do think it took a lot for you to send that in. I'm sure you're frustrated and at the same time, probably feeling a little bit desperate to get your wife on board with you or for you to get on board with your wife even. And there's going to have to be concessions. I mean, that's just going to happen, whether it's on your wife's part or on your part, Mark. So
yeah, thanks again, Mark, for writing that in. All right, so our next comment was Adrian. I just listened to the latest Brews Views episode on drinking and health. Thank you for putting this one out there. I've been wrestling on whether or not my love of beer is becoming a problem. And I was, for the most part, basing this just off of how often I was drinking and how many. You've helped me put my mind at ease because it's not interfering with my life. I still go to work every day. I don't drink every day, but most days. I only drink at night after the work day is done. I'm not drinking to get drunk, escape my life, or release stress. I just love beer. I agree with Marshall in that sometimes I feel I need to drink to finish the keg because I have another beer that's ready to keg. That was an easy problem to fix, though. I started bottling when I need room and giving it to my family and friends. It's a win-win. They love getting the beer, and I no longer feel pressured into drinking when I don't want to. Thanks again for another great episode.
Thank you for the comment, Adrian. And just a couple points. First off, there's this, he mentioned that listening to that episode, listening to our opinions, it validated him and it made him feel less like these things in his head that were going over. Well, do you have a problem? Is this an issue? That's very cool. I'm happy that we were able to provide that. That was not our intention though. And I don't want anybody to rely on our opinions as being some form of validation for their very real problem. I don't think Adrian has a problem. I'm not saying that. And at the same time, I'm a little bit okay with it because I feel like the puritanical nature of our culture and where we come from, that has had a huge influence on people's thinking. And I absolutely disagree with it, with that whole concept. And so the fact that we were able to provide a little bit of balance for you, Adrian, I'm glad we were able to do that. If you should ever start having a problem though, get help with that. I'm going to keep saying that over and over because I don't want to be anybody's excuse. That's not our goal here. So.
Oh yeah. Same for me. And I'm glad you said that, Marshall. And I'm glad, Adrian, also that you took away like one of the messages I was hoping people would take away. It's not necessarily about the number of drinks, or it's not based entirely on the number of drinks, but the effects of the drinks on the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And, even one drink can be a problem for some people, right? Because sometimes one drink leads to a whole host of other issues, right? And I'm not enough of an expert to comment on those sorts of things. But again, it's not about the number of drinks necessarily. It's about the effect of those drinks on the rest of your life. But the other aspect of this too, and it bears repeating. We've mentioned it a couple of times, but the physical effects of drinking alcohol too, right? Like alcohol's a toxin for your body. Your body's got to process it. You're putting a bunch of sugar and calories in your body by drinking beer and stuff, so like there is that aspect of it too. Yes. So again, just because it's not affecting, the rest of your life from hey, you're still making it to work and you're not drinking to escape your life, but you can still be drinking enough that your physical health is going to be impacted too.
Absolutely.
So, mind that as well.
Well, and to that point, there are people out there, and I don't want to minimize that the very real physical impact that drinking alcohol can have on a person's, health. I get that. At the same time, we all make sacrifices in our life. I mean, I don't even know if I'd call it a sacrifice. We do things that we know are risky, that are not good for our health. If you ever order pizza, I mean, you're doing something that is arguably bad for your health, and yet we still do it. That's kind of the perspective I have with alcohol. If you overdo anything, then yeah, it's a problem. For some reason in our society, it's okay to overdo certain bad things, but boy, when it comes to alcohol, don't overdo that. I agree with that. What I'm saying is, how about let's not overdo anything? Let's view things. Moderation is a term that gets thrown around a lot, but it makes a lot of sense here. Be thoughtful, be cognizant, be responsible. That's my take.
Yeah, and it's your personal choice, right? Like too, which is cool. Exactly. I mean, go to the level that you're comfortable with, and that makes you feel happy and healthy, right? Yep. If that's 2 drinks a week, fantastic. If that's 2 drinks a night and that works for you, fantastic, right? Like it's your personal choice. That's the great thing about where we live. We get to make those kinds of choices.
Absolutely.
You live with the consequences as well. Decisions have consequences, but again, you get to decide if how much you want to drink and how often.
Yep. Great point. Next comment comes from David. He says, I'm a 60-year-old engineer who, among other things, enjoys brewing and drinking beer. My wife and I have 4 adult children. I especially love the seasonality of beer. I started brewing because I like IPAs and now continue because I don't want to drink just IPAs. Sometimes that's all stores stock. For me, the issue with beer has never been alcohol, but potential weight gain. To counteract that, I employ a healthier lifestyle that includes waking up at 6 a.m., drinking black coffee in the morning, then water with lemon, then finally 1 or 2 beers after 8 p.m. I also do a half hour of cardio in the morning and a half hour of weight training in the evening. Intermittent fasting with a late breakfast after 11 a.m. and an early supper before 6 p.m. No lunch or eating in between meals except for fruit if I'm hungry. Then I'm in bed by 9 to 10 p.m. It works for me. I do this to be able to have beer daily, but I'm healthier overall. While some people may say I'm addicted to beer, I'm much, much more addicted to coffee. Strange how they'll never fault coffee. My other hobbies include gardening, raising dual-purpose chickens, and ocean kayak fishing, all food related. Thanks for the podcast. Very informative.
I love this. And my wife told me not to make this joke because I know this is a real thing, but intermittent fasting to me, that's one of those things that just, I know it's a real thing. Okay. And I'm not minimizing anyone that has used this as a weight loss goal, but intermittent fasting to me is kind of like saying, yeah, I practice intermittent sobriety. It's like, I didn't drink. I only had 2 beers tonight. So, and I was sober for the other 23 hours of the day or something. But so I just kind of chuckle at that. I'm not trying to make fun, David. I just kind of like it whenever people say intermittent fasting. I feel like we all do that. It just depends on how you define the number of hours between.
For me, it's every 3 hours.
Right? Yeah, I intermittently fast every 3 hours, and I intermittently, don't drink beer, every 18 hours or so.
Right.
Yeah. So, but the other point about coffee, this was in my notes for the last episode, but I actually forgot about it. Yeah, dude, I drink like 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day, every single day. I start drinking coffee at like 5:30 a.m. and I drink it throughout the day. My coffee's a little different than alcohol because there aren't as many like mind altering effects. Okay. So I can drink 3 or 4 cups of coffee and not have to worry about like not driving a car or something or not being able to do work or my job or something.
Right.
But that's kind of a fun point too. I had a boss that was addicted to French fries. He never I never saw him go more than like 24 hours or so without a French fry. Like we'd have to go someplace and get French fries. So I mean, there are a lot of things that people enjoy or quote are addicted in the non psychological term that they just like it. But yeah, it's just so funny. I mean, there are so many things that we overeat, and French fries has got to be one of those that can't be good for you if you eat it every day.
Yeah,
God.
But well, I'll tell you, the intermittent fasting thing, whatever. I have friends who do that as well. What I appreciate about what David is saying here is it works for me, and that is the beauty of, at least where we live. I've never lived in another country, but that's the beauty of having liberty and having personal, being able to make decisions for ourselves. And if it works for you, then do it, my man. And that's what I love about it. And he's 60 years old and he lives this. I mean, he's healthier than I am. If he's doing these things every single day, he's healthier than I am. And I'm only 40, so he's got one up on me, and he enjoys beer, and it's not getting in the way of his normal life. He's got a family. He's got a wife with 4 kids. I mean, it's a beautiful story. And this is exactly what I was talking about. Yeah, I get what he's saying about people not faulting him for being, quote, addicted to coffee. There's a bit of a stigma associated with substances, mind-altering substances in our culture, and perhaps rightfully so on some level. So I do get why people might. But if anybody is faulting anyone for their healthier drinking habits, I don't know. I just tell them to, scram, get out of here.
Yeah, dude, that's the same. David, if I am you, whenever I'm 60, I will be so happy. Right. I mean, I work out. I do about 30 minutes of workout a day, but that's it. I'm not doing cardio in the morning and an hour of weight training in the evening and stuff. And I like my French fries too. But all right. Next comment comes from Joshua. He says, "Hi folks. I'm a 37-year-old man who's worked in the beverage industry for 9 years and 5 in the brewing world. I've worked for a macro as a machine operator, and now I work for a small craft brewery as a packaging manager, cellar person, pilot brewer when someone is sick, forklift goober, parts orderer and installer, and generally the person that sweeps a lot and keeps the toolkits tidy and clean. I love this person. This is my favorite brewery person." He says, "Every year I see my PCP, my primary care physician, for a physical. They berate me for having more than 4 drinks a week. I'm 5'6" and 150 pounds, a bit chunky around the gut. It's a sad bod," I'm told by my wife. That made me laugh so hard whenever I read that. A sad bod. I love it. It's not a dad bod. It's a sad bod.
Yeah. According to his wife, even. That's the funny part.
Yeah. All right. But he says, "But otherwise, I'm super active. From spring to early fall, I ride a bike 8 miles one way to the brewery in Dorchester, Massachusetts. Otherwise, I take the MBTA, which is local transit, and read or snooze. On my spare time, my wife and I hike through the Blue Hills and other parks and beaches in the area. My wife's a pescatarian, and I've been a vegetarian pseudo-vegan since 14 years old. My weight has been 145 to 150 for over 15 years. I always have a shift pint when I clock out. I try to avoid the 8% hazies and normally stick to low 5% Helles or lagers. When I get home, I like to habitually have a shower beer and a beer with dinner. Maybe or maybe not, I'll have a beer before bed. I've not been drunk except for going away parties, holiday parties, or life celebrations." I had a thought in all of this. I guess what I'm getting is your episode made me feel warm and fuzzy. Contrary to my PCP, I feel quite good with my lifestyle and relationship with beer. I don't always drink for effect. I drink to hydrate and refresh my head. I've never been abusive to my wife or any other person, and I think, as you mentioned, I do really stupid things sober. But when I'm drinking, I don't like to tinker with things or do anything dangerous. My mother and father are very conservative Christians from South Central Pennsylvania, and they think I'm a drunk or an alcoholic because I drink more than 1 beer a day. I've always been capable of not drinking. Sometimes when my wife and I take road trips, I won't drink the whole day we commute, the nights at the hotel, etc. I suppose that's all. It's just nice to hear people talk about drinking alcohol, enjoying it, and not demoralizing someone drinking more than 4 beers a week. I too love sci-fi. Bless my wife for putting up with the countless hours of Star Trek, Star Wars, and all things Terry Pratchett and Vonnegut."
Oh, what a great comment, Joshua. Thank you so much for writing in. There's a couple things I want to comment on this. First off, the whole PCP thing, your primary care physician. They're paid to keep you as healthy as possible. At least that's what we've been told, in our culture. I get why they might, it's weird because if somebody comes into me as a psychologist and they say that they drink 4 beers, a night or whatever, but they swear they don't have a problem, even as somebody who will drink more than 4 beers in one night, I still explore that. I mean, it's just something that we do. If I were a physician and you were coming into me to stay as healthy as possible, I might make a recommendation that I might not 100% agree with just to kind of cover myself. You know what I mean? And so I do wonder if that's not a part of it sometimes. I remember I think I told this story in that last Bruce Views episode, but telling my primary care physician, hey, listen, I run a brewing company. We brew beer. We talk about it. We drink it. When I tell you the truth about my drinking, then it's because I want to be honest with you. I honestly don't have an issue. And she said, well, I'll take you at your word. Great. Just make sure it doesn't become an issue. And my health is good. My physical health is good. So I feel, again, fortunate there. The mother and father being very conservative Christians. We did an episode a while back, I think a couple years ago, where we talked about kind of our upbringing and our views of what formed our views of alcohol these days and all that. I come from a very religious background as well, so I can relate with that piece of it. I feel like I'm bragging here. I'm so fortunate. My parents, who are actually my aunt and uncle, there's a whole story behind that, but they are very conservative Christian, and yet they fully embrace who I am, the fact that I no longer believe what they believe. They buy me beer when I come up to their place in Seattle. I mean, it's awesome. And they don't judge me for it. And I feel like they really do, this quote unquote kind of Christ-like perspective. They embody that very well. And so I do appreciate it. It's part of the reason I don't feel resentful towards religion anymore. So it must be kind of a bummer, Joshua, to not be able to have that kind of a perspective and to have your parents who love you very much kind of dogging you because of the way you drink. So I'm glad we were able to offer some sort of a non-demoralizing perspective for you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think I've mentioned it a time or two. My parents are Southern Baptists, where drinking and dancing is totally prohibited by the tenets of the religion. And I guess I can say this on air. It never really stopped them from drinking or dancing.
That's modern religion. My wife and I have a whole theory on this today. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, they did, but maybe it helped them a little bit, monitor what they were drinking or control it a little bit, I guess. But I really enjoy having a drink with my parents. And I'm kind of sad that you don't get to enjoy that with your parents as well. But yeah, so many of the other things that you said in there, like your primary physician and alcohol. I mean, that's because, one thing I would always say too, like you, Marshall, when I was a lawyer, when somebody would come into my office, one of the things I would always tell them is, you need to tell me the truth, right?
Yes.
You need to because if you lie to me, I can't do anything. If you tell me the truth, then I know about it and I can try to fix it or solve it or avoid it. But anyway, all that's to say is that, for your PCP, your primary care physician, there's a bunch of research out there that talks about alcohol as a toxin, right? And it talks about heart disease and things like that can come from overconsumption of alcohol. Mm-hmm. And overconsumption of alcohol being, I don't even remember what the numbers are, but there's stuff out there. So your physician does need to know about that. And my experience hasn't been that they're going to berate me. They're going to ask and say, oh yeah, you should probably drink less. But like you, Marshall, I just tell them look, I'm happy with where I'm at. I'm healthy and it's a part of my life and I don't want to do that. And they're used to say, okay, cool. I did my job. Yeah. And that was the same thing as me as a lawyer too. I have to recommend things that are in your best interest as a lawyer, right? I can't tell you, yeah, just don't pick your kid up from school. It's fine. Don't worry about it. No, somebody's going to get pissed about that, right? Not. And then the last thing, Joshua, is thank you for mentioning Terry Pratchett. I'd been looking for a new sci-fi series, so I'm going to pick up Discworld. And you can berate me later for not having read Discworld yet, but I'm going to pick that up and start reading it.
I will say I don't get into sci-fi, but the fact that he brought up Vonnegut, I'm a huge Vonnegut fan, I've read by huge. I think I've read like 90% of everything he put out, and when you really dig into Kurt Vonnegut Jr., you start to realize that he put out short essays, and there's all of these things that never got published, and yada yada. But Breakfast of Champions, man, great writer. All right, final comment comes from Ben. He says, a little while back, I found a shirt ripping off the Brulosophy name and slogan. I gave it a 1-star review and tried to direct people to your Amazon store. Amazon just informed me that they won't post the review. Sorry, I tried to help. Dancing Dolphin Crafts is the culprit, if you care to pursue it. Maybe there's nothing you can do. Anyway, I enjoyed your last podcast. I enjoy all of your podcasts and thought it was pretty cool that you're a fellow Sheeb. Much wow. Rough week. Yikes. The only reason I included this was because he actually did comment on that episode, and I had mentioned that I was kind of obsessed with cryptocurrency, but also this whole t-shirt thing on Amazon. If you go to Amazon and you just search for Brulosophy shirt or one of our slogans, they who drink beer think beer, whatever it might be, you will find that we have been ripped off by a lot of people. My wife has made it her goal to report as many of those as possible, but it just keeps happening. I've never heard of Dancing Dolphin Crafts. I'll take a look at that and see if we can't stop them from selling our stuff. It's so frustrating though, because we know we don't make a lot of money off those shirts. I think we sell them for like $22 on Amazon, and Amazon keeps like 85% of that. So we're not making ourselves rich off this, but we do trust that the people who are going and buying those, besides just wanting really fashionable duds, are trying to support us or trying to help us out in some way. And so it's frustrating to know that money is going in the pockets of somebody else, and it's not helping the Brulosophy podcast or our website. So thank you for pointing that out, Ben. Again, the easiest way to do it is if you go to brulosophy.com. At the bottom of every article, there's a link to our Amazon store, basically. And all of those shirts, when you click that link at the bottom of the article, it'll take you to the stuff that we produce, that we get a kickback for. So just use that. That's probably the easiest way to do it. About the whole crypto thing, fellow Sheeb, I'm a Dogecoin holder. Absolutely. I got really lucky and got in when it was 1 cent. And so I'm really happy with that. But yeah, man, rough week. It's been a rough month. Are you kidding me? It seems to have stabilized a bit, and this is not a Dogecoin podcast, but I have to imagine that a lot of people out there, with the way things went, I know you're not a holder, Cade, or a hodler as it were, but I have to imagine a lot of homebrewers out there got into it as well.
Yeah, I have no idea what those words mean. Hodler, sheeb, much wow, or even what rough week we were talking about. So I'm just sitting here going, okay, I guess, which is also kind of a fun thing to do. Like whenever you're just like sitting around drinking a beer with people and somebody starts a side conversation, you're just like, yeah, I got no idea what you're talking about, but I'm just going to drink my beer and have some fun.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'll tell you what, Cade, if you were drinking with us at Crow and Wolf, we've been going there a bunch lately. They just opened, good friends of ours. And I've probably helped more people buy Safe Moon. They're doing some crazy cool stuff, and I think it's just going to be a neat thing to invest in for all the good that they're trying to do out there as well. But that's the one that I'm really excited about now, and big time holder in that one. My kids all own Safe Moon for fun, kind of teaching them about the crypto world and stuff like that. So, anyways, this is not a commercial for Safe Moon, but if you'd like to buy some, go do it. It's kind of fun. All right, that does bring us to the end of this episode. Thanks to everybody who submitted their feedback and wrote into us with your stories. There were some bits of feedback, some emails that I received that we didn't include, and I'm sure that some have come in since we've recorded this episode. So if we didn't get to yours, I do apologize. Maybe we'll include it in a future feedback segment in a future episode. If you have feedback about any episode, you can email it to feedback@brulosophy.com. Cade, any last words?
No. Thanks again, everybody, for writing in and being honest. And if you've got something else to write in, I'd love to hear your stories. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, let us know what you think about these types of episodes. We've never done this before. We have our Brew and A, but it's usually not about the perspectives of our listeners. It's kind of our opinions. And so I thought it was really neat sharing the views that you guys, our listeners, have. And if you like this, maybe we can do it again in the future. All right, don't forget to subscribe to the Brew Lab podcast, where Cade goes into the lab with brewing scientists to discuss research they've performed on our favorite beverage. And make sure to keep up with all of our beer and brewing antics over at brulosophy.com. The Brulosophy podcast is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors, as well as all of our rad listeners. We seriously could not do this without you. Cheers to everyone who has subscribed and left a review of our show. It makes a huge difference. If you haven't yet, please consider doing so. Head over to brulosophy.com/support to view a list of ways you can easily help us to continue producing this podcast. If you want a reward for your support, visit patreon.com/brulosophy. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Brulosophy podcast. Until then, think beer.
Start off the morning with some hot tea, lemon and honey, cause it suits my bro. Put some herb in the bowl, yeah, it's homegrown. Ain't gotta go through the middleman no more.